Geometry lesson on reflection. Okay, there's a warm-up. Pause the video and work on it. When you're ready, please start the video again. Okay, the answer to this is second quadrant and a third quadrant. It's probably a good idea for you to sort of like instead of writing the answer doing in your head, try to show the work. Okay, so the image from reflecting the figure in quadrant 3 over y-axis. So that is the y-axis. And then we have something that is in the first quadrant, right? Call that A. So if you have a reflection over a certain thing, that thing right there is called the line of symmetry. So it's like folding a paper along this line right here, guys. And when you do that, there should be an image that's perpendicular and opposite side like this. And that will give you, let's choose a different color, A prime. And it should be perpendicular and the distance should be the same. And that yields a second quadrant. Yes? Okay. So this is the first, second, third, and fourth quadrant, right? That looks like 4. Okay, it's like 3 vertical lines, right? Yeah, that's how you do them. So we name them counterclockwise, starting on the upper right hand side this way. 1, 2, 3, and a 4. Okie dokie. All right, guys. The second one is the image is reflecting a figure in the second quadrant over x-axis. So question number 2 is that my line of symmetry, in this case, is the x-axis right here. And the image was in the second quadrant, which is here. So if we fold the paper along this way, it should be going along this way. Same distance from the fold, and it should be perpendicular, right? Right. So it goes like this. That should be B prime. That length should be the same, and that should be perpendicular. So that guarantees you that you go from second to the third. Hence, the third quadrant. All right, guys? All right. So we're going to do something very, very, very similar, right? For an exercise. So in here, the line L, instead of being, we're going to make it slightly more challenging. Instead of being y-axis or x-axis, we're going to have a line, any line, right? And that it will be reflected over that line. So for example, when you have an A over here, we're going to reflect it, but as I said, it has to be perpendicular, right? But do you remember perpendicular, guys? All right, if this thing has a slope of -1, then the perpendicular slope of that is what? Negative reciprocal, 1 over -1, which is the negative of whatever the number is, which gives you +1, right? So as you could tell, this is +1, up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, up 1, so on and so forth, right? So because that slope is -1. All right, so if that's the case, what do you do to the B? Well, one of the things you could do is, I can't really show it to you, but I would actually use a ruler, right? And I might do something like this. Get a ruler and just go over it like that. And I might have that ruler and slide it down this way, guys, right? And that way, when I do this, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, if that's the case, right? This point, I went right 1, up 1, I do the same thing. So that must be the B prime. And I might do the same thing, right? I'll take a ruler. I'm going to show it to you as if I have this thing going on. So I'll do it the same way this way, right? So when I do that, what do I get? Okay. So I may actually have to stretch that out a little bit more. So let me make that a little bigger. And I know my slope is what? 1. So I'm going to go from this corner to this corner. Make it really long, right? And then I'm going to drag it down like this. Oops, right there. All right. And what I notice is that I have to go 1, 2.5, go up, 1, 2.5. So go I1 half, 1, 2, and from here half, 1, 2. Okay, that's my C prime. So knowing that, I'm going to pull that down just a little bit. So I'm going to connect all these points, right? This one, oopsie. Let's make it, there you go. And let the Notability do the work for me. And there you go. All right, so let me highlight that with magenta. So this particular shape, let me make that a little bigger. Right here, that represents the reflection, right? And if you look, this is perpendicular, that distance is the same, that's perpendicular, and that distance here is exactly the same, 2 tick marks. All right, this one has 1 tick mark, 2 tick mark, and 3 tick mark to show that they're not the same length. Okay, all right, guys. So what do we notice about this? Okay, so in this particular case, the given points, the pre-image ABC, so the points A, B, and C are called pre-images or pre-images, right? And the points A prime, B prime, and C prime are known as the image. The result of the transformation in this particular case is a reflection, right? A reflection across a symmetric line, right? All right. So reflection. How can you check that you drew an image of the triangle correctly? Okay, so let's try to reiterate what we just talked about, right? Number one, A prime. So when I connect this to this, B prime segment, and segment C prime must be perpendicular to the line of, that was pretty bad handwriting, line of symmetry. Okay. And then 2 is that the line L, in this case, bisects A prime, B prime, and the segment C prime. So that's actually a more efficient way to say that this distance and this distance is the same, because line L is bisecting them. They're the same, and these two are the same, and these two are the same, right? And there's a follow-up question. How can you check that A prime, that should be a segment right there, is perpendicular to line L? So this is a follow-up question to the first one. Well, the product of slopes, right, is equal to -1. In other words, the slope of L times the slope of A prime. Well, let's take a look. We knew that the slope of the M was -1, right? And that right here was 1. So -1 times 1 is -1. Check. So this is the same statement to say the product of the slopes is -1, right? Is that the perpendicular slope is a opposite or negative reciprocal. Okay? So that's, I'm sure, the way that you were taught, and that is still correct. That hasn't changed, by the way, right? It's just that this is a more formal way to say that in algebra. Okay, guys? All right, so we do have your turn. Oopsie, too much. Oop. Here we go. Do me a favor and try to draw the image of triangle ABC in both of them with the line L. This might be a little bit tricky, right? Just offer you a hint. What I would do is maybe pick a point that intersects here and here, find that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. that looks like my slope over, oopsie, is -2. Okay. So my slope over here is -2. Then perpendicular one is what, guys? Half. So what I would do is come from here, go half. Oopsie. Okay. Half will be what? Go down like this way. Okay. So I'll just extend that all the way through if I were you, like this. And try to draw a line that's like using a ruler, slide it down and see how that could help you this way. Okay, guys? I'm offering you a little bit of a hint. And this one, if you don't do this to part B, this gets really, really confusing. Okay? So once again, if I could offer your help. If you don't want my help, you could skip this part over. Look at that. That's a lattice point, meaning it's something that's on the grid, basically. And this one over here, oops, even smaller one. That's great. So my slope is, that's 1 there, that's 1, 2, 3. So my slope is 3 over 1. So what is my perpendicular slope that you have to find? Meaning AA prime will be -3. Oh, sorry, 1 over -3. So in this case will be what? You go, basically go 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, 2, 3, 1. That must be it right there. So you could do it that way. Sounds good? All right, guys, pause the video. I think you had enough of the hints. All right, guys, here it is. Oopsie. I think it works better when I make it smaller. All right, there you go. And that's the answer. And if you notice, AA prime is perpendicular this way. You could tell that visually, and that length clearly is the same, right? Same thing over here. That is perpendicular to that, and so on and so forth. But you have to outline the A, right? A prime, B prime, C prime this way, right? And they kind of overlap into each other, okay? We could talk more about this in class, right? All right, guys, let's continue on with the lesson. And here are some definitions, okay? So if we have, what is a perpendicular line, right? As we talked about in Algebra 1, it is a line that intersect, they cross each other at a right angle. So something that's perpendicular. So in this case, we would say line L is perpendicular to line M. All right, what is a perpendicular bisector? Well, it's perpendicular. On top of that, this line N is dividing the A and B into 2 equal parts, right? So it says the line perpendicular to the segment at segment's midpoint. So there's a fancy way of saying that it's dividing the segment into 2 equal parts because it intersects at the segment's midpoint. All right. All right, what is a reflection? Reflection across line L maps P to its image P prime. And don't forget the property, guys, that PP prime, the segment PP prime, is perpendicular to the line of symmetry. This right here, line L, is called the line of symmetry. And that has to be perpendicular to the line L. Okay, and on top of that, as we mentioned earlier, line L bisects PP prime. Okay, guys? All right. So we have some exercise for you guys to do. All right? So in this particular case, what I want you to do is there are 4, that's it? Okay, wow. It's more than that, but here it goes, guys. So we got 4 pictures. We have ABC that's reflected over x-axis. So that's a line of symmetry right there. So whatever is here has to be a mirror image this way, right? And this one is over y-axis. So it's like folding a paper this way, right? And y is equal to x going this way, and y is equal to x. No, that can't be it. Oh, typo. So that right there has to be y is equal to -x. So the line goes this way, okay? All right, guys, go ahead and try to see if you could do that yourself first. Pause the video. Okay. Some of you guys probably noticed this note over here, guys, right? We noticed that these are the rules, but it's okay to memorize them, but I don't think you really need to, because it will kind of make sense to you, okay? All right, let's examine them one at a time. So when I reflect over here like this, right? That is a line of reflection, meaning CC prime has to be perpendicular and the line has to divide CC prime equally, which means that has to be C prime. That has to be A prime. And being perpendicular going this way, that's like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And my B prime is right here. And when I connect them, it looks like this. But what do you notice? This is for 1. This is for -1. Oh, wow. Have you noticed that the xy becomes x negative y? Yes. All you gotta do is change the y to the negative y. Then it is a reflection over x-axis. And if you look down, that's exactly what that says. Okay, so I'll be going through each one and confirming that those rules are actually in fact true, and we could easily see why that must be the case. Okay, so let's make a note, guys. This is the line of symmetry, right? So which means that AA prime is bisected by the line y-axis. So A prime must be here, because that length here and here is the same and they're perpendicular. If I do the same, that is from here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it must be the other way, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. C prime. And over here, it's a 5. So I go -5, go this way. That is a B prime. So when I connect them this way, all right, that freehand, I guess is good enough, right? What do we notice, guys? This is for 1. This one is -4, 1. And you could see that for the other ones, right? I'm only writing down one of them. Is that xy became, can you tell? That's right, -xy. So in other words, when you're reflecting over y-axis, the y value stays the same, but the x becomes opposite. Funny enough, when you're doing over x-axis, x remains the same, but the y becomes the opposite. I don't think you really need to memorize that. If you do it a couple of times, it will come to you. And then if you memorize on top of that, even better, right? But doing problems will help you memorize. I think that's what I'm really trying to say, okay? Now, because the x-axis, y-axis was kind of obvious, but this one is not so obvious. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just draw y is equal to x. And that goes from here all the way to this point. And that'll be the reflection. And I see that the slope is 1. So to make it, whatchamacallit, let's go do this. It should be reflected across slope of -1, right? All right. So when you do that, you could go that here, left one, up one, left one, up one. If you do that a few times, that clearly, let's do this too on top of that. I'm just going to draw a different color here. Let's use yellow on this one. Yep. Oh, did I just erase that? My bad. All right, let's draw this back. That's the line of symmetry. And for what we're trying to do, it's going to go this way, right? That's right. So if you have a ruler and you could sort of figure out the perpendicular, you could just go like this, right? Oh, great. And you could do the same thing over here. And you could use that as a guide. And it took me up 1, left 1 to get there. You do the same thing over again. So that must be the B prime. See that? And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to slide this down with a ruler going like this, right? But it's on it already. So what do we do? In that case, you just stay on it. You don't go anywhere. It's A prime. So when I connect them, it looks like this. Now let's look at C. C is 4, 1. What do you notice about the C prime? That's 1 and a 4. Hey, wait a minute. Did we just swap X and the Y? Looks like it. Let's look at the B. That's 5 and 3. And B prime is 3 and a 5. That's right. The rule says XY now gets swapped. When you swap it, you know it is reflected across Y is equal to X. Is that what the rule says? Yes, it does. Great. Now, we're reflecting across what? Y is equal to negative X. So that's my line of reflection or line of symmetry. Okay, guys? And let me put that right there. That's great. And then perpendicular to that is what? Because the slope over here is -1, negative reciprocal, or what times -1 gives you -1? It's 1, right? So that's going to be parallel to this. All right? So that's my ruler. Okay? Using that ruler, I'm like, hey, wait a minute. I'm going to follow that ruler. That's like down 1, left 1. Down 1, left 1. That right there is A prime, right? A prime. And we're going to move that ruler across until it touches C. And what do I notice? I have to go down 1, 2, hold on, 1, 2 and a half, 1, 2 and a half. So you go half, 1, 2, half, right here, 1, 2. Oh, it's right there, C prime. So that right there is C prime. All right, let's move that back to touch the B. Use a ruler to slide over, and that will help you. And then you're like, hey, wait a minute. How do I get to this point? You go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Continue on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's right there, guys. Right? So when I do that, all I have to do is just connect them. Yeah? That's right. And when I do, I get this line. I get this line, I get this line. Doesn't that look like it's been reflected? Yes, it does, doesn't it? I can slide this over, right? When I do this, that distance is perpendicular, and that AA prime is bisected by the line L. I'm just using generic L as Y. In this case, that's Y equal to negative X. You do the same thing over here. How about BB prime? Yep. This appears to be perpendicular here, and that distance appears to be the same. And for you using a pencil and paper, you use a ruler, right? That would really, really, really help you guys. Okay. All right, guys. We have one more. Your turn. Go ahead, guys. Do your best. Pause the video. Okay, guys, here's the answer. So if you had difficulty with any one of these, we'll talk about it in class. All right, guys? All right. Have a good night.